It is midway through August, which means it is the perfect time for me to talk about my July wrap up and every single book I took a look at in the month. Hey everyone, it is Ray. Welcome to my little bookish corner of the world. And as I said, I'm going to be talking about my July reads. Yeah, I am a little bit behind the times. I had a few things happen that I wasn't scheduling in, and yeah, so things fell by the wayside, but I am back and I am talking all things July. There were some really good books, some really bad books, definitely one that is going on my top 10 of this year, if not very, very close to the top itself. And you will have seen me talk about that. You'll have also seen me talk about some of the books that I really didn't enjoy in my August picks done using my 1-star review jar. So before before anything else, let's talk about the books I read. And the first one on this pile is Agatha Christie's Sparkling Cyanide. This was actually a book I meant to read in June. However, I lost track of time, got caught up in another book, and Sparkling Cyanide fell to the wayside. This is not a book that features either of Christie's most well-known characters. It's not Poirot, it's not Jane Marple. It actually features, I believe, Captain Hastings, who is mentioned a few times with Poirot in general, but it is cleverly done. The plot has many twists and turns, and as with many things, it is money that drives everything. Of course, there are certain elements of the book that may be considered in today's society slightly questionable, but as with everything, you have to overlook the small things to see the larger picture. And in that case, it is another pretty good book by Agatha Christie. That is Sparkling Cyanide. Of course, as this was June's 2024 Agatha Christie read-along book, there had to be another, and there was. It was a Poirot taken at the flood, which is actually the line from a Shakespeare play. Anyway, this is slightly different. It was written in 1948, and it's slightly different to the other Poirots that I am far more familiar with, and most people are probably far more familiar with, in that it starts with a brief appearance by our Belgian detective. The entire story gets played out without him playing any part whatsoever. And then just as the mystery is about to be solved, Poirot comes to the rescue and announces, "I have solved it." It is interesting. There are many, again, Christie is known for them anyway. There are several red herrings in here. I think the only issue I had with this book was the ending. And I know that this is something that many people have difficulty with. I'm not going to spoil it because I think that it is definitely worth reading. But take out that last chapter and you've got a really good story. The last chapter introduces something that made me feel quite dissatisfied with the outcome, because it's just not what I'm used to. But that is Taken at the Flood by Agatha Christie, the second in my Christie reads, and that was the July book on the Agatha Christie read along. The third one is A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I've read all of the more recent novels by this author, and I have to say that I really enjoyed The 7-Year Slip, though it's actually the one I don't own. However, this particular one, A Novel Love Story, for some reason reminds me of Lost in Austin, a TV show that was back in 2013, aired on ITV over in the UK, and it was about a girl that finds that she swaps places with Elizabeth Bennet in Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and is the one that Darcy falls in love with. And this had very much that kind of vibe. It isn't exactly like that. Essentially, the main character, Eileen, is she's really stressed out. She needs a break, and every year she goes with her friends on a reading retreat. But this particular year, all of her friends have other plans. One's going over to Iceland with her boyfriend, and she knows that the boyfriend plans on proposing, and other friends just have that their lives have got in the way. So she decides she's going to go on her own. And when she gets into the middle of nowhere, her car breaks down, and she finds herself in this world that is a mirror of the world in her favourite book series that sadly remains unfinished because the author passed away. In this world, she meets all of her favourite characters, as well as a man who owns a bookshop. She finds herself, the town is called Eloriton. Anyway, this man is the only one who isn't restricted by the story, and she starts interfering in these characters' lives, and obviously things take a turn. I'm not going to reveal everything, but it is, for some reason, it just completely reminded me of Lost in Austin. I still think it's an entertaining book, but I don't think it's as good as The 7-Year Slip. Just my view. So that was book 3. I do also have 2 ebooks on this list. Both of them were previews on NetGalley. The third book is How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. And I loved this. It had me in stitches so much. It's if anybody's ever listened to The Sofa of Time starring Nick Frost, it's a BBC radio play. This has that kind of tone to it, with Davy, who is stuck in a time loop where she is continually trying to defeat the Dark Lord and dying in the process, yet she can't actually die, so she comes back time and time again. And on this one particular time that she comes back, she decides, well, hang on a second, if you can't beat them, join them, I'm going to become the Dark Lord. And this book follows her journey to get to the location in the book where you become the Dark Lord. And it is hilariously funny. It really is. It had me in, as I said, stitches most of the way through. And I think a perfect indicator of how funny the book is has to be the map, because it's drawn on a mocked version of a McDonald's napkin. And I don't know if you can see that, but this is the map, and it's where she needs to get to the convocation, and she makes friends along the way. You find out she dies multiple times along the way and has to get to the same stage. And she learns, obviously, from her death, because she still remembers everything that happens, but nobody else does. So that is How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler, and I would definitely recommend it if you like something a little bit more light-hearted and funny. So maybe like I think it's Elven Quest, which is another radio show, and definitely The Sofa of Time. Now we're going to get to a book that I honestly wish I hadn't read, and I felt quite sad about that because I have liked several of her previous works, and that is The Oper Affair by Tessa Bailey. This is the second in her sports romance series. I didn't read the first one because I have zero interest in golf, and to be honest, these can kind of be read as standalones, but I hated this book. I really did hate it. Not as much, I admit, as another couple of books that I've read over the last few weeks, but this book I found, I don't know if it's because I'm not the target audience any longer, though it is a romance, so why wouldn't I be? But there are certain scenes in this book that just actually made me feel quite nauseous. I liked her Bellinger Sisters series. I especially enjoyed It Happened One Summer. I think that the sequel was a little bit weaker. It's like I liked Unfortunately Yours and Secretly Yours. I preferred Unfortunately Yours, I think, to Secretly Yours. But I thought, because I wasn't a massive fan of golf, I wouldn't bother reading the first novel, and I read the second one, and yeah, I really do wish I hadn't done it. This is going to find its way onto the unhaul shelf, but I think it's also going to be quite useful for a bad smut scenes thing that I do for charity once a year, though I've now got to wait until next May in order to do it again. So that was a 1-star read. Anybody like this, please do let me know, because I would love to hear if I've misread it or if I'm not finding the right thing in it any longer. The next book is the last of my paperbacks for the month, and that is My Lady's Secrets by Katie Moran. I read this because I was actually going to be speaking with the author. It's published by Head of Zeus and came out in July this year, so it's less than a month old. This is the proof, but the actual cover has this beautiful silhouette on it, and it is tales of it's based during the Napoleonic War and has a lot of history in it. And for me, as a great fan of that particular era of history, not because it was a great period or anything, but because it was there was a lot of intrigue. It was so many things had happened in France and in mainland Europe in general, and were happening in the UK as well, that it includes characters like Lord Byron. It mentions the first and only assassination of a prime minister in the UK in history. And if you don't know anything about it, Spencer Perceval, do look it up. It's very interesting, because it talks about rebellion and a potential uprising and how they go about preventing it, which is kind of appropriate at this moment in time. And it is Regency, though Regency was a very brief period in history. It just garnered a lot of attention because of the fashion and the politics and the romance of the royalty and everything else. That is My Lady's Secrets by Katie Moran. And if you want to hear her talk about her book far more, I've actually got an interview with her, and I will post the link in the description box below. The next book is my favourite book so far, and I have talked about it so much. We are going to be talking about this in my book club this week. And I'm really looking forward to finding out what they think of it, and that is Babylonia by Costanza Casati. I don't think I can say anything more about it, apart from if you love ancient history, have a fascination for mythology, want to find out more about the only Babylonian queen, Semiramis, this is the book. I mean, my version is absolutely stunning, but this book is incredible. Costanza Casati wrote my favourite book of 2023, Clytemnestra, and I think she's done it again. I cannot wait to find out what she produces next. I'm not going to put any pressure on, but I would love to find out what the next subject's going to be. But that is Babylonia, and I heartily recommend pick it up, please. Next one was one of my one-star reviews. Well, was one of my one-star picks for July, and that was Sorrow and Bliss. So, you know, I've already talked about all of these. I will post the link to the video where I discuss these books in the description box again. It wasn't a great book, but it wasn't anywhere near as bad as I expected it to be, given the review that I picked it from. This was probably the better of the three books that I picked, which makes me quite sad, given the fact that the next one was by Brandon Sanderson, who I think is a very good writer. I just don't happen to think this book was a very good one, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea. It was one of his secret projects written during the pandemonium, and yeah, I don't think it was great, but maybe because I haven't read the Cosmere series, I'm missing out on something. So perhaps I should leave it on the shelf, read a few of those novels, and then come back, and it might make a bit more sense. The next book actually was worse than the Oper Affair, and that is Fair Rosaline, which was the third of my one-star picks. Did not like this, do not like the writing, do not like the concept behind it. Was never admittedly a massive fan of Romeo and Juliet, but Fair Rosaline absolutely takes the cake. Would not recommend, and I don't say that very often. And the final hardback for the month is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. This is the Waterstones special edition. It is very beautiful. I could have had the Lock Library one, but I put a lock on that order when I saw this one because I really wanted it. And yeah, it's not a bad book, but as many reviewers have said before me, there feels like there is a distinct separation between the first part of the book and the second part of the book. There doesn't seem to be any clear motivation for the characters. The plot is a bit messy, and it is a very long book, considering you come out of it knowing that there is going to be a sequel, but it just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And for that reason, I nearly didn't run to get the special edition of the sequel, but I have to have things matching on my bookcase, and as they cost the same, I managed to get in there just in time. Unfortunately, I missed out on Onyx Storm, but that's another story altogether. I had to very, very quickly check because I couldn't remember the title of the last two books I read, books 12 and 13 of the month. And they were Brother Song, the last in the Green Creek series by TJ Klune. I found this one was a little bit more repetitive than the others, though it did help to remind me of the wonder that was Wolf Song, which was by far my favourite of the series. However, it didn't really hit home for me, and I feel that his later books are far better. It was great that these were re-released and they've been rebranded and given new covers and everything, so given new life, but I do feel that perhaps one book was enough for me. And the final book I read was actually Too Busy for Love by Phoebe McLeod. I have this thing with this particular author, Phoebe McLeod, in that I have read every single one of her arcs on NetGalley, and I just get invited every single time she's got a new one out. I get invited to read it, so I always do. This one kind of was related to another book that I'd read for her, which was Love at First Sight. Site spelled S-I-T-E because it's based on a building site, and it had great potential, but it sort of failed at the last hurdle in that it had a very unsatisfactory ending. I feel personally, I'm not so interested in in 6 months' time they were doing this. Don't care. I want to know that how the book is, and if we're going to do a future thing, I want to see that they're happy and they're moving on and they've got are future developments in their lives. But this one kind of ended with that before they did the epilogue. There was a massive twist, a load of things happened, and then all of a sudden we're just getting a go back and revisit characters who were in the first book. But as there was no indication when you pick up the second book, when you picked up Too Busy for Love, there was no indication that that particular book actually had anything to do with Love at First Sight, at least not until closer to the end. So it sort of fell a little bit flat for me. However, those are the 13 books I've read. Have you read any of these books? Would you like to read any of these books? Did I get something wrong? Did I misunderstand something? Or do you think that I was completely right in my, not ratings, but my reviews of these 13 books? I would love to hear from you. And please don't forget, if you are around here, subscribe, like, share, do all those things that help people to find me, because it would be great if I could build this community and join others in the meantime, because I am quite regularly on BookTube watching other people's videos, because I find any style of reading, everybody's opinions are different, and I absolutely love that. So until next time, this is me saying bye.